Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov's chess channel and welcome to the Lindores Abbey Rapid challenge in 2020. We are now in the quarterfinal stage. It's Magnus Carlsen versus Wesley. Wesley played, I think, so far a great tournament, great attacking games he played also in this common static positions like in the Italian, and I've covered really a great game by Wesley so far in the Italian Giocopiano, in which Wesley I think showed us a really great theoretical novelty. So this will be, I think, really a great clash between the world champion and Wesley because Magnus Carlsen, I think he wasn't satisfied with the outcome in this group stage. Now when it comes to this direct duel, I think Magnus Carlsen is always the favorite. You cannot be really favored against the world champion. Whoever faces Magnus, I think, will be not the favorite in that match game. So Magnus, on the other hand, I think he played many sidelines. He tried maybe some different openings. That's why I think he lost also so many games in this group stage. But now in this direct duel, I think he can really crush anyone, and again is really favored to win even this tournament. So let's check out now the first game between Magnus and Wesley. Magnus opened with the move d4. So knight to f6, we have c4, and after e6 we have the Nimzo Indian setup. After knight to c3, bishop to b4. So still common ideas, of course, of this setup. The main positional idea of blacks is simply to take bishop takes c3. After b takes c3, white will continue the game with double pawns. So one of the best way, I think, if you play this opening, is simply not to react here like Magnus Carlsen did here, because if you play a3, your opponent will probably take bishop takes c3, and after b takes c3, you basically lost sort of a tempo with this move a3. So here Magnus leaves the position simply like this. Okay, if you want to take the knight, but at least I'm not going to waste the tempo in order to challenge you to do it. So here knight to f3, simply healthy developing move, and we have castling play by Wesley. So bishop to g5. So Magnus challenges, of course, also here the knight is a little bit endangered and also is pinned, of course. Here Wesley plays the most aggressive way. I think it's the move c5. Very nice attacking move. It's still common theory of this setup, of course. The main idea behind this move is really, first of all, to challenge the center, then also to liberate the queen. Here with the move queen to a5, then you have really some ideas to even further challenge the knight, and with h6 g5, kick away the bishop, and then maybe play here with some knight to e4 ideas, really creating serious threats against this pinned knight on c3. So that's why the rook to c1 play by Magnus. He has to first protect everything, and we have c takes d4, knight takes d4, and now comes this idea h6. So you could maybe here try again bishop to d2 or similar ideas, but basically what you want to do from white's perspective is to force your opponent to play some moves as g5. Then the pawn structure in front of the king would be much more further weakened. So g5 is very risky here also for black to play it immediately, but it's basically the best choice because we want to continue our attack against this knight on c3. Here first Wesley continued to pressure here in the center with the move d5. Very nice move also. So here c takes d5, we have g5. Now comes this tricky idea, and after bishop to g3, we have queen to d5. So here Wesley tried a different way to proceed. You cannot, of course, take the queen because of the pin. So that's why Magnus had to secure the knight first, and we have now queen to a2. So okay, it seems maybe something went wrong here for Magnus Carlsen, because he has lost now pawn, he has to defend here. But there is, as I said, this problem of this advanced pawns. So this h6 g5 pawns are advanced, so we could always maybe crack here the position in front of the king. And the main problem of blacks is still the lack of development. So here the bishop is not out, the knight on b8 is not out, the bishop is still blocked out by its own pawn. On the other hand, Magnus Carlsen has played with many pieces, down a pawn, of course, but he has to protect first his position, then maybe he can create some attacks here on the h file. So here Magnus played the natural move queen to c2. We have bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, and now knight to e4. So you see how Wesley attacks further, but as I said, the main problems by this in this attack by black is that you basically attack with the same pieces. You still haven't developed this bishop, this knight, so you're repeating moves with the same piece. You haven't proceeded with your development. Here Magnus played again queen to c2, challenging the knight, and we have queen to a5. And again, it seems to me that something went wrong for Magnus, but here Magnus, I think, has a deep opening preparation here. Now I think Magnus plays maybe his homemade preparations. He played the move king to e2. Again, it seems a little bit, this is not good because the king is on e2, really an unnatural square. In the game, Wesley tried knight to g3. We have h takes g3, and now I think white has a good position, although it's really a weird position. But now you see the h-file is open, which Magnus basically wanted to happen. And now you see Wesley So has really developing problems, and he played first, of course, king to g7. He has to protect first the pawn, and Magnus played f4. So one of the best ways is, of course, to crack the position here. If you try f6, then you weaken further your like squares here. If you try to build sort of a compact position with your pawns, then you build simply too many weaknesses in front of the king, so you cannot protect everything, and basically the bishop is also a little bit stuck to the defense of this e6 pawn. So g5 f6 wouldn't be such a great idea here. After the move f4, I think Wesley So made his first mistake in the game. He played the move bishop to d7, and the best way, I think, to proceed here is to play the move knight to c6. You have to challenge the knight, even if you have to give something back. Queen to c6 is not such a dangerous idea because we have bishop to a6. We could simply trade off the bishops, secure the king, and maybe compete with these rooks on the c d file. So wherever white tries to attack, we could always here compete on that file. So here after the move bishop to d7, Wesley So allows again Magnus Carlsen to continue his attack. He played simply b4. This is a great move because Magnus simply attacked the queen, sacrificing another pawn. What we want to do here from white's perspective is that we want to deflect the queen, because the queen is defending here also this g5 pawn. So we want to deflect, then f takes g5, and then if the h file opens, we could have great attacks here with the queen and the rook. So even here after the move b4, if you try queen to d5, it's not such a powerful idea because we could simply play king to f2 and then bishop to c4. Still we could further attack the queen and again play on our main idea, f takes g5 and then queen to h7. So great attacking move here by Magnus. Queen takes b4 was played, and now comes this idea, f takes g5. We have rook to c8, and Magnus first, of course, took with the check. G takes h6, king to h8, and now really Magnus played really not a great idea. Queen takes c8, a very nice queen sacrifice. Bishop takes c8, and now rook takes c8. This is, I think, a completely winning position here for white, because the problem is not that you have lost the bishop and the rook for the queen, which wouldn't be basically a problem, but again, this lack of development of Wesley So is simply something that you cannot get out from now, because you cannot move the knight. Here is the problem, you lose the rook, and if you try something like a5, pardon me, here after, of course, king to h7, here in the game, Magnus played knight to f3. Even if you try something like here a5, to get out with your rook, the main tactical threat is now to play knight to g5, then h7, h8. So what to do here? Here Wesley So, of course, tried a desperate move f6, trying to get some kind of a breathing space for the king, maybe restrict also this knight to come on g5. But this is really a bad position. Magnus simply improve the position of the king because he wants to build sort of a wall in front of the king and around his king, because the king could be, of course, vulnerable to black's possible checks. So king to f2 was played. We have queen to b2, and now bishop to e2, covering everything. No more checks by the queen are possible. Now the main threat is, of course, rook to c7, followed with h7, h8. So here you see Wesley So has to give up. The rook, because, as I said, if he tries a5, rook to c7, you can move maybe your king, but now we could try again here to move further, or we could even try another check, and it would be game over. So I'm not sure what went wrong, because Wesley, so as I said, had this development problems. Maybe knight to c6 was simply better to somehow challenge this centralized knight on d4. So as said here in the game, knight to a6 was played. Here Magnus simply took the challenge. We have now gained 2 rooks and the bishop for the queen. Great sacrifice by Magnus. We have knight to c5, not a problem, because now this rook comes into the game. Basically you cannot take the pawn, because you get checkmated here with this rook and this rook. So this rook would simply cut off here this file, and then we could play rook to h1. So here in the game, knight to e4 played, but okay, here Magnus can escape. Again, it's not so easy to take this bishop, because again you get some checks. Here in the game, f5 was played by Wesley, so, and now we have bishop to d3 attacking the knight. We have queen to f2, again not a problem. If you try some checks, again it's not such a great idea, because you cannot create further checks. The f1 square is perfectly covered. So in the game here, queen to e3 was played, and now Magnus simply takes the knight. After f takes e4, we have now rook to d7. Basically it's a forced checkmate sequence. Whatever you do, if you even take, then we can always create this check. You can move, but still we could always include this knight into the attack, and again black's king would be checkmated. So in the game, after the move rook to d7, here king to g7 was played, but now Magnus played rook to g8 and it was game over. Whatever you do, let's see, if you take now, here we could simply cut off here this file, and we could play something like rook to g4 followed with rook to h4. The problem, as I said, is that you cannot create perpetual checks. You could try maybe one check, but the king has a perfect security here with rook to g4, rook to h5. So it's basically unpreventable in this position. After the move rook to pardon me, here after the move rook to g8, Wesley so resigns. So great sacrifice by the world champion, but still I'm not sure why everyone is so scared to play against Magnus Carlsen. Knight to c6, really a natural move. You can get out of these tactical possibilities. You can really trade off many pieces, include your rooks into the game, finally get your pieces out. You see bishop to d7, and Magnus punishes that immediately. That's why he's the world champion. Although this opening that he played was maybe the most accurate one, but I mentioned that before now in my covered games that were played by Magnus Carlsen, that Magnus is trying now really to play more aggressively, which I really like. I like his style, although Magnus loses some games, but still, as I said, he's still the favorite to win this tournament. But this new style, where he basically challenges you to play the most active moves, I think no one can follow up with that, and still I think this will be his tournament, although he finished, I think, on the 4th place only in this group stage, but still this is really a great Magnus Carlsen. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Meanwhile, you can watch my other covered games in this tournament. Here is the link, and you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.